Hi, this is Tiffany, volunteer for the Christian Book Fair. I'm going to share today middle school grade books that are classics or award-winning books to read and enjoy. The first one I'm going to mention is the Bible. This is a classic. It's a great book. This is just a comic version of it that is really engaging for middle school and high school type older kids, especially those that aren't as interested in reading. Of course, if they are, then get them a Bible. Specifically like an action-based Bible would be really good. This is a beautifully illustrated comic style book of the Bible, and this is really great for kids. Okay, so starting with award-winning books, I'm going to start with Lois Lowry's Number the Stars. This one won a John Newbery medal, and this is a really great book. It's about a Jewish girl during World War II and her family, and how another family in Denmark helps them escape. So this is a really great story in terms of in America, we don't really learn that much about the Danish role in World War II. And it just happens that I know a little bit more about it because part of my family is actually from Denmark, and I have a grandfather who is Jewish. And so I heard the stories about how the Danish, weren't able to really, fight off the Nazis. They didn't have that power, but they were very cunning in how they helped the Jews escape the Nazis. And so this is a really great story about that. And it talks about the Danish king and how loved he was. And there's more fables about him that I remember hearing about that this book didn't talk about. So that's an interesting character to look up also. And but in this book in particular, it does talk about the Danish king, their role, and how cunning they were in being able to escape Jews out of Denmark. The number of Jews that were escaped out of Denmark are staggeringly high compared to the rest of Europe, which, not that they didn't do, good job. They did, thank you God. But their efforts were quite cunning. And so this story is about a family who, risks their safety to be able to help another family. And so a very brave story, and it's very well done. It's very sweet. I think it's purely, historical fiction. I don't think it's an actual real story. And but it's a very good story, and I wouldn't doubt for a second that it is based on real life stories that happened during this time. So really well written, very sweet book. The family, togetherness is really sweet in here, and it's a good adventure and a good story in the end. And so much appreciated, much enjoyed. I highly recommend this book. Another one is The Door in the Wall. This is also kind of a quick read. And this one also won an award. This is the John Newbery Award medal again. And this is about a little cripple boy who is the son of a lord during the Scottish Wars. And he is trying to reunite with his family. And so it's a story about this boy crippled and his bravery with a couple of other good fellows who help him along his journey to be able to become closer to God. This is also a very faith-filled book. The faith that's shared throughout this is really beautiful. So highly recommend The Door in the Wall. And the next book I have shared before. This is the Isle of Swords. This would be for like an older middle school book. And it also won an award. This is the Mom's Choice Award. It is about pirates. It is a pirate adventure, but it is very Christian inspired also. The characters are, some of them are Christian, and they read the Bible, they pray, but they are also kind of stuck in the middle of a pirate adventure. And it's really gripping. It just you kind of get just drawn into it. And it's one of those ones where there's so much action and adventure and twists and turns, you just don't want to put it down. So really enjoyable read. I think that kids would really enjoy this. Another one is a Newbery Honor Award. This is Little Town on the Prairie. This is by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And Little Town on the Prairie is a really sweet, again, historical fiction book. Or actually, it's based on the life of Laura Ingalls Wilder. And this is the story of starting these little girls when they're starting on the farm. And so it talks about, this is kind of like late 1800s. And so being able to kind of understand the humbleness of those times, and how they depended on doing everything pretty much themselves. If you have food, you grow it, you bake it, you don't go off to most people don't, especially on a farm, don't go off to the Walmart down the street and get their food. They work hard for it. And but the girls are very sweet, and it's about the times, and the different people they encounter. It's really just a sweet family story, and the life that they encounter with others. And it's not really as faith intensive as I thought it would be, especially during these times, in a time where you have to work hard on a farm to do everything for your needs for the day, sun up to sundown. I would just have expected a little bit more faith content about just praying throughout your day, and something. But there's only 2 mentions of God. There's in the beginning, early on, it talks about the 4th of July celebration, and the country is given to God. It's and all men are free. And I'm well, I mean, not all men. So it was, but it's a historical fiction, or it's historically based. So it's that unfortunately was kind of the mindset of people that and so obviously there was a lot of growth and freedom that was needed at that time. So that was pretty much the only mention, except in the very end it talked about sitting through a pastor's sermon. I think it mentioned a pastor in the back. And but all in all, very sweet book, family oriented, historically based story. Highly recommended. I love this story. My daughter really enjoyed this story too. This one is Rosa Sola, and this one is it was I'm trying to think now. I think it received a specifically maybe a Catholic award, and then also a it was top 15 list of kid books, and some list I don't remember, but it was, I thought, worth mentioning because it's a story about an immigrant, and it's also it's kind of an intense story also about life, and the loss of a sibling, and which is in terms of like losing a sibling in pregnancy, it's actually a lot more common than people realize. And so it's about this little girl's faith and persevering in faith throughout such a tragedy in her life. And it's really actually very sweet. She has some struggles with God. And, at first, her faith is just so beautiful and sweet. And then she kind of struggles with why would God allow this to happen? And then in the end, it's about how God is going to use this to make her faith stronger. Very well done, and especially in terms of having a strong faith basis for a young character in such difficult times. So this was a very, very good read. Another one that I really liked was The Bronze Bow. And this one is also by, Elizabeth George Spear. And this is also a John Newbery Medal Award winner. This is historical fiction. This is a really interesting, imaginative story about these young youth who are living in the times of Jesus. And they start off as Jews, non-believers. They encounter a zealot. They encounter specifically Simon the Zealot. And then eventually they, are kind of drawn into the Christian, interacting with some of the Christians. And then there's a lot of discussion about Jesus and if he believes and if he doesn't. And so it's kind of interesting because it's more of like an outside in look, whereas when we read the Bible, it's an inside out look. We're looking through the eyes of the apostles and through the eyes of Jesus, through the eyes of the followers. And this is through the eyes of somebody who's not a follower, that was contemplating and struggling with the concepts and the ideas of Jesus at that time. So interesting and good, really great action-packed story. I enjoyed the characters. It's also very well written and really good read. Okay, my last award on the list is going to be The Giver by Lois Lowry. So I already mentioned a Lois Lowry. This is another one. John Newbery Medal for this book, The Giver. This is a really interesting story. It's more of like a fantasy type story, and so very different from the other historical fiction. But this is basically a community, almost like a dystopian type community where they're trying to not have people's emotions control them. The government wants to control them, and so they've decided that emotions are bad, let's get rid of them. And so they try to, they also have a character who is everybody has their own like roles and their jobs, and one is the giver, and it's somebody who gives memories, or they keep the memories of the past, and basically this new society is completely shielded of any of the memories from the past, so that they don't know what life was like, and they don't know what they're missing either. But they're basically told that everything in the past was awful, terrible, awful. There's some life, I think life affirming message in here as well, and it's a really interesting story. I really enjoy this type of story. So I like that there was also a little bit of a love interest in there. And so I highly recommend this book. Really, really good book. Well written, great concept. Again, by this author. I don't have a Narnia book with me, but I do want to mention it because the Narnia series is also a classic, and it's won numerous awards. I don't know what they all are, but it's a really great fantasy type story by C.S. Lewis. And if your kids have not read it, and I would highly recommend getting it. It's a really enjoyable book. I think even elementary school, middle school, high school, I think adults could even read it. It's really, not only is a great story, very well done, but and very imaginative as well. But it's also very well written. C.S. Lewis is just a fantastic writer, and the way he describes things and draws a picture for you and makes you think about things is really great. And that story is an illusion. It's just basically children during the time of World War II. They're moved out into the country to try to protect them from the war, and they discover a portal to another world. And this world is basically covered in snow and coldness, which is kind of symbolic of the coldness of their hearts, because they've been ruled by this overlord who is cruel and hateful and controlling, and so the kids come, and then the idea is that one of the boys gets tempted by the queen, and then the other siblings have to go and save him. And then of course Jesus has a moment in this, not literally, but figuratively, is represented by the lion who gives his life. And I shouldn't give away too much. So it's a really, really great story, kind of a, seeing these kids help to bring life to this other world, and how they're opposed, and it's fought against, and then how the adventure and excitement of how they overcome and win. So the next few stories are going to be classics. So some of them are going to be historical fiction as well. Anne of Green Gables is a wonderful classic story. The author is L.M. Montgomery, and this is a series of books. This is the first one. This is sweet little Anne, who gets adopted by a family who really wanted a boy to help work on the farm, and they got this lanky, redheaded little girl who gets into mischief. And she's a very sweet character, wonderful, wonderful story, and very well written too. I really enjoy this story. I think any young lady would really enjoy the story, especially obviously if they like the Little House on the Prairie. I think they're really going to enjoy this as well. Like Little House on the Prairie, it's not overtly it's not quite as strong in faith, but there is much more of a faith element in this story relative to the Little House on the Prairie. So there's reference to God in this in a couple places. And great story. Okay, the next one is a classic. This is Little Pilgrim's Progress, which is based on the story of Pilgrim's Progress. And it is an allegory, and I really, really enjoy this story. I don't know why. Not only is it adventurous and is it interesting, but it's faith-filled, and there's good morals and lessons to be picked up from this story. I think this is such an interesting and fun adventure for kids, and it's really quite fascinating that it was written by a man who was when he was in prison for preaching God's word, and so he very much used that time wisely. This book is the story is very, very old and still very well loved and appreciated. So really great story. This is an adventure story more along the lines of like Narnia, kind of fantastical, but it's really it's really an allegory. So highly recommend Little Pilgrim's Progress for kids. Another favorite, The Hobbit. This has actually also won awards. It doesn't have an award stamp or the NEWBERRY, but it has won awards. I just don't know which ones exactly. This is a classic, and it's a really, really enjoyable book. The Hobbit, based on, or The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, and this, I would say, is, I've heard many kids say, and people, even adults, say that this is their favorite book. I've heard boys say it, I've heard girls say it, I've heard adults say it, and I'm going to tell you, I really, really do enjoy this story. I am not a fan of like sorcery, wizards, and witches in books. I do make an exception for certain ones that have allegorical or it's making like a figurative point or something. So Narnia, I would consider as an exception. The witch is in no way glorified, and the story is really an illusion of the witches representing evil, and the kids are trying, God is wanting to overcome that. So in this case, again, there is a wizard. And there's some that are clearly bad, some that are not. I do consider this more an illusion of good versus evil, and that in this particular story, it's pointing out the fact that it's not the wizard that is, ultimately the one who defeats the evil. It's the most humble, the humble of heart, the humblest of souls that is chosen to be able to help save the world. Really great imaginative story, very well written, very creative. Again, this is not overtly Christian, but it does definitely have good versus evil, and the humble hero is of course kind of symbolic of Jesus and his faithful followers, those who God loves a humble heart, right? And so it's hard to find a hero who is a heroic hero and humble, So I really love this story. I highly recommend it. And another one is the Mandy Collection. Okay, so I only read the first book in this collection, which is Mandy and the story of the tunnel, and it was really great. Love the story. It was a really sweet story about a girl who is kind of in a difficult situation. She's she has a family, but her family is some of them very much love her, some of them very much reject her and are even abusive, and she has to struggle with the loss of her father, and then trying to find a home, and the struggles of those times, because this is also set in the early 1900s, and so it was not an easy time especially for girls. And her father had passed away. So she was, she really was in dire straits and needed help. And there's somebody, finally she finds some hope. She does have some good friends that kind of help her throughout as well and encourage her, which is really sweet. And then there's a little bit of a love interest, and very sweet, and the um, a little bit of a I don't want to give too much away, but she has hope in the end of something really great. And and then there's some other characters that kind of pop in that are possibly going to interfere with that, and how she kind of takes the higher path, and just does her best to do what's right and not become like confrontational or anything like that. And then it has some twists, and then the story ends with a bright surprise. So I highly recommend it. Really great read. I enjoyed the character and the family, the struggle, and then their perseverance. And there was great story. I highly recommend it. That's a classic. Another classic. I already talked about Anne of Green Gables, but this is like another version of it that also has the Story Girl. I haven't read the Story Girl, but it's by the same author, and so if you want to be able to provide have both stories for your kid, that this would be a great alternative. So that's all I have. For other classics, I'd probably look into maybe some of the other saint stories. I don't think I produced any except for the Bible stories. So that would be my recommendations in terms of great middle school age books. These would also be good for high school. High schoolers, I think, would really enjoy these. And these are my list of award winners and classic stories that are much loved and appreciated. I hope you enjoy. God bless.